There are moments when the mind feels overloaded, as if every thought weighs more than the body can sustain. Maybe you've felt this before, that quiet sense of mental exhaustion that's hard to explain, but instantly recognizable. And yet, in the midst of this inner turbulence, a nearly instinctive curiosity appears. Why do certain intense physical experiences bring more clarity than hours spent trying to organize your own thoughts? The Wim Hof method emerges precisely at this point of questioning. It makes no promises of miracles, but it offers intriguing pathways. Cold that awakens presence, deep breathing that softens inner chaos, and small challenges that seem to speak directly to the most tired parts of the mind. The question that opens the door to this universe is simple yet powerful. What might the body try to express if given a different space to breathe? Sometimes mental reorganization doesn't begin with thought. It begins with experiences that renew the way the brain interprets the world. Cold and breath, when approached with awareness, become windows into understanding how the mind stabilizes when it discovers new points of support. And perhaps this very point of support is what so many people have been seeking without realizing it. When the body encounters cold in a controlled way, something unexpected happens. Thoughts that were scattered begin to align. It's not because cold offers mystical lessons, but because it reduces the space for internal distraction. Faced with this intense sensation, the brain reorganizes priorities and searches for immediate focus. In that moment, worries that once felt overwhelming become mere background noise, and the mind touches a clarity that feels almost instinctive. This response is not abstract. Studies show that controlled exposure to cold activates brain regions linked to attention and presence. The body interprets the stimulus as a safe micro-challenge, and this awakens a sense of internal organization. Instead of trying to suppress thoughts by force, cold does something subtler. It creates an environment where what truly matters has room to emerge, and the excess dissolves. In that brief interval, many people encounter a kind of calm they hadn't found in days. Even before any philosophy, the breathing of the Wim Hof method acts directly on physiology. When the breath deepens, the body sends signals to the nervous system indicating that it is possible to step out of constant alertness. It's as if every inhale opens inner space, and every exhale releases the weight accumulated over the past days. This doesn't eliminate concerns, but it changes how the brain interprets each one. Neuroscience explains this phenomenon clearly. Rhythmic breathing influences brain regions responsible for emotional regulation and adaptability. When the brain perceives more stable patterns, it reorganizes the flow of thoughts and reduces the sensation of internal chaos. What many describe as relief is, in reality, the entire body recovering coherence. The mind responds to this coherence with greater clarity, more presence, and a quiet sense of order. Cold and deep breathing function as small rehearsals for moments of emotional tension. Every second the body faces an intense yet safe stimulus activates internal processes that strengthen the ability to handle complex situations in daily life. These micro-challenges, repeated over time, teach the brain not to react impulsively to discomfort. Instead, it begins to recognize that it is possible to remain present even when something unsettles. This practice has a cumulative effect. The brain begins to record these experiences as references of balance, creating new pathways for emotional response. Gradually, situations that once triggered anxiety or mental confusion begin to lose strength. Not because they disappeared, but because the mind learned another way to face them. It is in this process that many people realize that emotional stability does not arise from a single leap, but from the sum of these small encounters with their own inner strength. In moments of mental overload, the mind usually travels in multiple directions at once. The Wim Hof method creates a different environment. It reduces the range of dispersion and brings the person closer to the present moment. When breathing becomes more conscious and the body meets the cold in a controlled way, the brain is forced to choose only one point of focus. This natural selection reduces the excess and allows thoughts to organize with greater fluidity. This kind of presence is not a magical state. It is a biological response. When the body concentrates on a single intense stimulus, it partially deactivates the circuits that fuel repetitive thoughts and future concerns. The result is a type of clarity that does not come from effort, but from an internal pause created by physiology itself. Many people describe this moment as a reunion with themselves, not because of the cold itself, but because mental silence emerges when the body finally breathes with more space. When a piece of content sparks reflection, many people look for ways to strengthen the space that supports them. Sometimes simple gestures become part of this exchange. A small note of presence in the comments, a sign that the message found a home, or even the interest in following new videos that deepen themes like this one. If something in these insights on the Wim Hof method brought clarity or comfort, expressions of support help the channel continue building this safe and sensitive environment. They are small ways of saying that this journey makes sense, not only for those who watch, but also for those who create. Cold exposure, when practiced consciously and safely, works as an emotional laboratory. The body perceives the stimulus as challenging, but the brain quickly learns that it is not a real threat. This distinction is essential because it allows areas linked to fear and reactivity to reduce their activity, opening space for more balanced responses. It is as if the cold helps the mind redefine what discomfort means, removing the emotional weight that often accompanies moments of tension. With time, this learning transfers to daily life. Small frustrations that once triggered anxiety or irritation become easier to handle. The brain, already trained through intense experiences, recognizes that it is possible to move through difficult sensations without losing stability. The mind begins to respond in a more stable, less impulsive and more conscious way, as if it had developed a new skill for inner navigation. This change does not happen suddenly. It is built gradually, every time the body comes into contact with a challenge that, paradoxically, strengthens from within. The breathing used in the Wim Hof method creates a silent dialogue between body and mind. As the breathing rhythm deepens, the nervous system receives signals that it can reduce the constant vigilance that accompanies periods of overload. This physiological adjustment does not occur only in the lungs. It reaches brain regions responsible for interpreting emotions, which gradually softens the internal weight that so many people carry without noticing. This process works like a bridge. On one side are the accumulated emotions that seem to disrupt the internal structure. On the other side is the need for clarity and mental organization. Deep breathing acts as the axis that connects these two extremes, offering the brain a more stable environment to reorganize thoughts. Many people report that after a few breathing cycles, the body becomes lighter and the mind finds a more organized path to deal with what once seemed impossible to arrange. This reorganization does not happen through willpower, but through the natural way the body responds when it finally finds space to breathe freely. The human body was designed to adapt, but modern routines often limit this ability. By introducing stimuli such as controlled cold and deep breathing, the Wim Hof method reminds the organism of internal resources that were dormant. When the brain realizes that it can move through intense sensations without collapsing, it recovers a biological confidence that directly reflects on emotional stability. This rediscovery awakens a sense of quiet strength that does not manifest as euphoria, but as balance. With this renewed adaptation, everyday situations begin to be interpreted differently. The mind stops reacting automatically to each tension and starts responding with greater discernment. It is as if, little by little, a new internal structure emerges, capable of protecting the individual from the overload that once shaped their days. This transformation does not need to be grand to be real. It reveals itself in details such as a deeper breath, a thought that no longer feels as heavy, or a moment of calm that appears in the middle of chaos. In these small signs, the mind announces that it is reorganizing. Many people believe that inner change requires major revolutions, but the body works differently. The mind reorganizes itself when it receives continuous signals of stability, and regular practices of the Wim Hof method, even brief ones, establish exactly this kind of signal. The brain begins to recognize a pattern of care, a rhythm that repeats itself and that over time transforms the way it interprets tension and challenges. This consistency creates a firmer emotional foundation, not through intensity, but through conscious repetition. As the days go by, this quiet strength becomes noticeable. It appears when difficult thoughts no longer occupy all the space, when the body, once tense, responds with greater softness, when the mind finds more organized ways to navigate feelings that once seemed disordered. It is not about eliminating pain, but about expanding the ability to coexist with it without losing balance. Consistency shows the brain that an inner support is available, and this profoundly changes emotional experience. In moments of overload, the mind tends to accelerate, creating chains of thoughts that feed one another. The Wim Hof method introduces a different logic. The body begins to send signals that it is possible to slow down internally, even when the outside world seems to demand speed. Controlled cold and deep breathing creates small physiological anchors that stabilize the nervous system, allowing the brain to find a rhythm that better matches what the person truly feels. This reconnection with one's own rhythm is not theoretical. It happens in the body before it becomes mental understanding. When physiology stabilizes, the mind recognizes that it does not need to react to everything immediately. An inner space emerges where feelings can be observed with less haste and more gentleness. Small pauses, once impossible, become possible. And it is in this interval that many people realize that mental reorganization is not an act of force, but a process gradually built from a body that finally breathes with greater freedom. When the body goes through strong but controlled stimuli, it activates adaptation mechanisms that are rarely accessed in ordinary routines. The Wim Hof method creates exactly this type of environment. It combines intensity and safety in a way that allows the brain to explore neurological pathways that were barely used. This exploration is not conscious, but happens naturally, as if the organism were opening internal doors that had remained closed due to excess emotional tension. With these new routes, the brain begins to organize information differently. Old reaction patterns start to lose strength, while more balanced responses gain space. This reorganization does not manifest in great moments of euphoria, but in small perceptions. A conversation that flows more calmly, a worry that once dominated the day and now takes up less room, an inner quiet that appears from time to time without a clear source. It is in these subtleties that the mind signals it is learning to reorganize itself through the body's own experience. There are moments, after deep breathing and intense stimuli, when an unexpected silence emerges. It is not the absence of thought, but a wider space within the mind itself. In this interval, many people notice that true reorganization does not happen only in the body or only in the brain, but in the silent dialogue between the two. This meeting reveals aspects that were hidden beneath the accelerated pace of daily life. And when this silence settles in, a question often rises with gentle strength. What inside you is still asking for space to be understood? Not as a problem to be solved, but as a legitimate part of your emotional story that may be waiting to be seen. This question does not require an immediate answer. It simply opens an inner path. A path that gradually invites you to recognize sensations, memories, and needs that once went unnoticed. It is in this recognition that many people find a new sense of inner order. Channels that welcome sensitive, deep, and emotionally dense themes only continue to exist because there are people who recognize them as safe places to breathe. Every shared word, every reflection sparked, every moment of clarity experienced by those who watch helps build this space that has become part of their spiritual and emotional routine. If this content brought relief, understanding, or insight into your own journey, gestures of support, such as a comment sharing your experience or the interest in following future videos, help keep this exchange alive. They are simple but essential actions that allow this space to continue existing as a meeting point between sensitivity, inner science, and the search for balance.